Welcome to Meaningful Mornings for the 400th time. The first semester of Meaningful Mornings was 60 mornings, and we explored making sense of stress when the Corona Challenge just began. The second semester of Meaningful Mornings was 75 mornings. We engaged in this last summer, and we explored Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga at a high level. The third semester of Meaningful Mornings, last fall, when we completed Bhakti Yoga and then flowed through Tips for Happy Living. This was 105 mornings. The fourth semester of Meaningful Mornings began this winter, as in January. And for 130 mornings, we explored Mahabharata, chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, and the initial part of chapter 2. And part 5 of Meaningful Mornings, which we're in right now. This morning we complete 30 mornings. We are completing Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga. For 400 mornings, we have been exploring inspiration. And we do this in the morning. That way, for the rest of the day, we are engaged in application. Whatever moved us in the morning, to keep being moved all day, because a knowledge that does not transform one is a waste. Please internalize this very direct and perhaps harsh statement. A knowledge which does not transform is a waste. And if you reflect on your past 400 mornings, the more you have reflected on Jivan Sutrani, on Sankhya Yoga, the more you would have seen what you do to be more integrated as a parent, as a volunteer, and you would feel yourself being more integrated. Your body does what your mind shares. Your mind follows the decisions of the intellect. Bhagavad Gita's chapter 1 is almost a preface to this scripture. And the subject matter of chapter 1 is fear. Different words for fear: moha, bhaya, worry, anxiety, attachment. Chapter 2 becomes the table of contents. For the rest of the scripture, the main subject matter is introduced for the whole scripture, and that is fearlessness. Fearlessness. How do we grow out of fear and into fearlessness? Through Sankhya Yoga. This is commonly known as Jnana Yoga, or the knowledge path. And Sri Krishna begins his philosophy with Prince Arjuna by teaching him, know your vastness. Vastness and fearlessness are synonyms. How am I to know this? Because I don't feel this at all right now. I have to train myself to know this, which is why after Sankhya Yoga comes Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is a training for the mind to follow the intellect, which is to follow the script, to know your vastness. In chapter 2, verse 9, Prince Arjuna says, Ha bhabhuva tushni. And I correct myself, he didn't say this. Sanjaya describes Prince Arjuna as saying this and feeling this. Ha means it's almost like a sigh. When you're hoping for something to go your way and it doesn't, you just sigh. Bhabhuva means became. Tushnim means silent. But not an intentional silence. This is a silence of dejection. For 44 verses, Prince Arjuna has not spoken. He spoke a lot in chapter 1, even at the beginning of chapter 2, but for 44 verses, we have not heard any words from Prince Arjuna until in verses 46, 51, 52, 53, where Sri Krishna begins to describe one who is fearless, one who knows their vastness, that they go beyond the Veda. That is the focal point. Prince Arjuna, like many of us, has grown up in an orthodox, traditional way, where the Veda, rituals, etc., are so ingrained into our personality. And for someone to come and share that you can go beyond the Veda, beyond rituals, this is fascinating to him. Before we hear Prince Arjuna speak again, in the last verse, verse 53, a mind that is engaged in karma yoga is ready to stand with the intellect. That is one of the words that is used, to stand. A mind that is standing with the intellect is arjava, or integrated. When the intellect becomes that powerful, because now the mind is there too, it becomes still. Why? Because the ego that keeps on agitating the intellect, that ego is being pushed back into the spirit. The intellect that follows the scripture is not one that is living because of a person. Living for a person, raga. Is not even living for a purpose. Living for a purpose, viraga. But rather is living for the presence. That is anuraga. An intellect that's in love. A love with infinity, a love with vastness. You will know that your mind is standing with the intellect and the intellect is standing with the scripture if you are becoming more inclusive. Prince Arjuna is less concerned about matters like, I am going to kill or I'm going to be killed now, because he's becoming more inclusive. He's thinking about dharma. He's thinking about Brahma, as in the infinite. And proof of all of this, verse 54. Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, you should be saying, Stita prajnasya ka bhasha, samadhistasya keshava, stita dikim prabhasheta, kimasita vrajeta kim. In our evolution, this is what we should be inquiring into. Let's focus on the word stita prajna. This will come again and again and again. Nya is like jnana, which means to be quiet. Knowledge is that which quietens, particularly the mind. But this is being described as prajna, not quietude, but rather silence. Prajna is one who is silent, not out of dejection, but rather intentionally. They feel complete, so there's nothing to think, there's nothing to say, there's nothing to do. They are being joy. Sthita means perpetually. I know we all feel silent from 7:45 a.m. to 8:03 a.m., sometimes from 7:15 a.m. to 8:03 a.m. But once 8:04 a.m. comes, it's no longer sthita. It's asthita. That silence becomes disturbance, becomes frustration. One who is silent in every environment, controlled or uncontrolled. That is what the word sthita prajna means. Ka bhasha, Prince Arjuna is asking Sri Krishna to describe such a personality. Ka bhasha, describe to me in general. Next quarter, he calls Sri Krishna Keshava. I've told you, Keshava means the one who has long curly hair. Like my disheveled beard. This is Keshava right now. But the greater import of Keshava is the one who can free us from klesha. Kleshas mean hardships like attachment, fear, sorrow. Samadhistasya, describe to me the inner world of one who is joyous, one who is fearless, one who knows their vastness. Describe their inner world to me. The third quarter, sthita dhihi. The word dhihi here again means intellect. Not an intellect that is filled with doership, like the typical intellect is. This dhihi is sthita, is silent. It is an intellect that is absorbed in divinity, not doership. It is an intellect that is overcome the ego, is not overcome by the ego. And he asks three, not inner questions, but outer questions. Kim prabhasheta, which means, how does the joyous personality speak? This is really question 2, okay? Question 1, describe to me, or how do they think? Question 2, kim prabhasheta, how do they speak? Question 3, kim asita, can you show me your asita? How they sit. And kim vrajeta, how do they walk? The second quarter, how did they think? Describe to me their inner world. The last 2 quarters, describe to me their outer world. How do they speak? How do they sit? How do they walk? And what's special about the last 3 questions, how do they speak and sit and walk? This shows that Prince Arjuna doesn't understand what enlightenment is. He's worried that if he's enlightened, he'll stop speaking. He'll stop sitting, he'll stop walking, he'll stop living. And so many of us are like that, correct? When I become enlightened, what will I do with my family? What will I do with my will? Will it become null and void? So these questions are very much aligned with our questions about enlightenment. We've reached the sthita prajna lakshanas. You have all reached there. You are sterya, which means committed. From inspiration to application. Your application yesterday was to be extraordinarily grateful. Why? We have systematically explored 100 verses of Bhagavad Gita. For some of you, you may never have done this. We have been together for 400 mornings. As you begin to vacation and perhaps go back to work, do recall, how did you survive and thrive in this Corona challenge? I got my second vaccine yesterday, and I was thinking that I survived health-wise this Corona challenge because of this vaccine and a mask, but mentally, it's because of this community. And tomorrow is the birthday of my master. I feel of humanity's master. And why I'm describing Swami Tejomayananda as a master, because his only offering to us is for us to be masterly. The word gracious is the word I used yesterday. How much grace we have in our lives to be part of such celebrations. Your application for this morning, I want you to pray for the swasti. Swasti means well-being of a role model in your life. Typically, you want a role model to pray for you, correct? Until tomorrow, you pray for a role model. It's because of them that we have an entity we can model after. And the Sthita Prajna Lakshanas are very much about that too. Shanti, Shanti, Shantihi. Be safe, be sound, be serene, be happiness.